Hello, good evening and welcome along to The Late Show Live. Now, she may have been Britain's shortest serving Prime Minister, but now she's back and launching what she calls the counter-revolution, a weekly blast against what she says is a media world full of groupthink, timid consensus and elites who, quote, get everything wrong. Hard to disagree with that. She says she's taking the gloves off.
In 2022, I was deposed from the office of Prime Minister of Great Britain.
People had decided her time was up.
I tried to save our country from the doom loop it is now in. We set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I was blamed for a market crisis that was not my fault. The deep state and their allies in the media and politics tried to destroy me because I challenged their decades-long failure. Now I'm back. I will expose the people who brought me down. I will take on the deep state. I will tell the truth about what is happening in our country and across the West. Tune in to the Liz Truss Show every Friday.
Well, she joins me live now here in Washington, D.C. Liz Truss, good evening, Liz.
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming. Is it too early to say Happy Christmas?
No.
Or do we do a Kamala Harris?
There's so much Christmas here in America. It
of course,
just feels
look at the snow
so
falling.
So Christmassy everywhere. It's great.
Yeah, I love it. The Americans do Christmas
They
very
do
well.
it all the time.
Liz, you've had a pretty impressive redemption arc. You were, of course, a Remainer Lib Dem back in the day. That's how you started out. Then, of course, you became Prime Minister.
I've always been a rebel, though. I've always been a rebel.
Well, you're even more of a rebel now because you've launched what some would call, you've been red-pilled. You've got your own show now, the Liz Truss Show. What's going on with that? Why have you decided to launch that?
Well, I was so frustrated by the way that the mainstream media just lies about what's happening in Britain, whether it's about our migration problem, whether it's about the economy, what happened when I was Prime Minister, but also the fact that so much gets censored and suppressed. And, we've got the American president is suing the BBC for lying. I mean, we have a real problem with understanding what is going on in our country and having an honest debate about it. Free speech is being cracked down on, people are being arrested and jailed. And I want to talk about those things because I don't think we're going to fix Britain's problems unless we acknowledge how bad it is, unless we acknowledge how deep the state has become, how powerful the unelected bureaucrats and the unelected judges have become. But also, we've got to take on the mainstream media. I look here in America for inspiration. Donald Trump was propelled by alternative media, whether it was Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, lots of the new stations like Newsmax. That is what made the Trump revolution happen. And I want to see a revolution like that in Britain. And after 14 years in politics, being a government minister for 10 years, being Prime Minister, I saw that often politics was downstream of the media. So I thought, if I can't beat them, I'm going to beat them in a different way.
Every time you're online, your money and your identity are at risk. Scams now make up nearly 40% of all crime in the UK. That's thousands of attacks every single day. In Britain, someone has their identity stolen every 2 minutes, leaving victims with wrecked finances and years of stress. The threat is real, and you could be next. ExpressVPN is your shield against criminals. It locks down your devices, hiding your personal information and financial details from hackers, scammers, and anyone else looking to exploit you. So whether you're checking your bank, shopping, or just browsing, ExpressVPN makes you invisible to prying eyes trying to steal your money and your identity. ExpressVPN shields your data with military-grade AES 256 encryption. That's the same standard trusted by the US government to guard classified information. This is the highest level of online security you can get. So don't wait for disaster. Secure up to 14 devices at once and get powerful password protection. Real support is available 24/7 because cybercrime never sleeps. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN plus 4 months extra for free. Every moment you hesitate is another moment you're exposed. Protect your money and protect your identity. Get ExpressVPN right now.
Yeah, but some would argue, Liz, of course you were part of the establishment. I mean, how could you not have been? You were Prime Minister. Why didn't you speak out at the time?
Well, I spoke out on lots of issues, and in fact, as Prime Minister, I tried to take on the establishment. I criticised the Bank of England, I criticised the Office of Budget Responsibility. It's become very fashionable to criticise them recently, but at the time, I was on my own and everyone was saying, Liz Truss is wrong, she's the one that's messed things up. But in fact, the Bank of England admitted that the crisis in 2022 was caused by them. Of course, that wasn't covered by the mainstream media. So I would argue I'm the only Prime Minister that actually tried to take on the people that were really.
And you say that's why they brought you down?
The people really run. I mean, I could say lots of other things. You know, back in 2017, I criticised the environmental agenda. I called out the plastic straw ban. You know, there are all kinds of ways in which I tried to change things.
That plastic straw ban was probably the most egregious thing that's happened in recent years. But Mark Carney's in town.
It's just an example of.
No, I'm being serious.
An elite who have had this whole, you know, they push net zero. I tried to stop the COP conference happening when I was Chief Secretary of the Treasury. I said it would be a load of hot air and a waste of money, and so it proved. And I was calling those things out all the way through my political career. But the problem is, when you are a cabinet minister, you're under collective responsibility. You have to go along with the collective agreement. So I guess I was suppressed.
I saw you yesterday in an interview said that you spouted the B word, rhyming with Rolex.
Oh, yeah.
You still agree with that? As a cabinet minister, you stepped forward and spouted Rolex?
Well, what I was saying, I think it was an interview of Harry Cole, who of course is part of the mainstream media, and I was
He's saving the
saying,
West.
Well, he nicked my book title, and what I said to him is he was spouting a total load of bollocks.
Yeah. Okay. With regards to your show, who do you want on your show? Because Mark Carney, the Bank of England governor who was presided over your term, he's in DC today. Have you met him for a mulled wine and invited him on
I
to talk
certainly
things
haven't,
over?
and I think he is the example of what has gone wrong with the West. You know, he's a Davos man. He was Bank of Canada governor. He was then the governor of the Bank of England.
Yeah.
He's floated from one position to another, spouting all these policies like net zero they've killed the British economy.
Yeah.
You know, why is it that all of our factories have closed down? Why is it that the economy's been stagnant? It's because we've had such high energy prices, or at least that's a major reason. Carney's behind it, but he just floats into yet another job.
Okay, he's not coming on your show then?
He certainly is not coming on my show, because my show is about getting inspiration from people who want to change things.
Yeah.
What is the playbook? How do we get the type of momentum behind a movement in Britain that Trump had in America? How do we create our own version of the MAGA movement? How do we galvanise the people who live outside London, who are in small towns, who maybe are self-employed, or farmers, who love Bitcoin? You know, there's lots of people who are hugely frustrated with what's happening in our country, and they need to be galvanised.
Talking of Trump, one of the main sort of attributes of their administration is dealing with illegal migration, and legal migration actually. So 2 million people have left, illegals have left the US, 500,000 forcibly removed. I went out on an ICE raid the other week. I mean, that was
well, that's good, because that means in a future administration you can do that in Britain, Ben.
Well, yeah.
You could go and lead the ICE raid in Britain, taking them out.
Yeah, it was good fun, securing America's borders. But they've just released a sort of national security paper, the White House, in the last couple of days, saying that Europe has 20 years. So your book was 10 years to save the West. This memo says it's 20 years to save the West, but pretty much agreeing with you, saying within a couple of decades, Europe will be unrecognisable. And they cite mass uncontrolled migration as a big part of that. What's your position on so-called remigration, mass deportations? Because President Trump tweeted about remigration the other day, saying the only way to deal with this problem is A, getting the illegals out of each country, but he also talks about remigration, which can include green card holders, people who are here on certain visas. What's your take on remigration?
We have to deport illegal immigrants. We have to deport foreign prisoners. We should also deport people who are on indefinite leave to remain. I think that's very important. But I would go further and say we've got to break the cycle of people perpetuating communities in Britain that are antithetical to our way of life. You know, bringing in cousins, having cousin marriages, perpetuating, you know, we have Sharia law operating in parts of Britain. That has to stop. So I would cut off chain migration as well, the ability of people to bring their families in, which I think has been a big cause. We've also got a big problem with student migration, you know, student dependence, visas for things like care workers. Well, I think the situation is so serious now that we have to take drastic action.
What about people who have been given leave to remain in the UK? For example, last year, I think 10,000 Pakistanis came on student or work visas, and then when they arrived, they said, oh, by the way, I'm going to claim asylum, and they were given asylum. Others were given leave to remain. I mean, should those people go as well?
Yes, they should. Yeah.
Even though they've lived...
We've got to be absolutely serious about dealing with this. I also think we need to look at dual citizenship.
Yeah.
I don't think people should be able to say, I'm a citizen of Britain and Pakistan and float between the two countries. I think that is a problem. It's created a perpetuation of cycles of behaviour. You know, I've talked about Sharia law. We've also seen the appalling grooming gang scandal, which still has not been dealt with, and politicians still haven't grasped the nettle and actually dealt with the police, who I think have been complicit in what's happened in Britain. So all of these things need to be dealt with. But the point I would make is, in order to do that, the Human Rights Act has to be abolished. That was the big mistake of the Conservative government, was not repealing all of the Tony Blair laws that created all these problems. The Human Rights Act, the Bank of England Act, the Climate Change Act, they all need to go. And we also need new people running the civil service. So can you imagine the current Home Office carrying out a successful ICE raid?
Well, no.
I mean, can you imagine it?
No. Even comparing the rhetoric,
not a snowball's chance in hell of that happening.
Well, would you back, for example, how they do here, so politically appointed civil servants?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You've got to do it. I mean, this is the ludicrous thing about being a government minister. You cannot hire and fire at the moment the people that work for you.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing a good job and they're ideologically motivated, and we know lots of them are ideologically motivated, we know that we've got transgender ideologues working in government. We've got net zero
Who's the civil servant you mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we spoke? Who transitioned? Some senior civil servant. I can't remember. I did ask you a couple of weeks ago as well, and I know you answered, but I'd like you to answer again for viewers who are watching our conversation again for the first time. What's going to change for Nigel Farage and Reform if indeed the polls are correct and they sweep into government in whenever the election may be? What's going to change? Because if the civil servants are still there, the blob is still there.
Well, the answer is nothing will change.
How's it going to be different from your tenure?
Unless you change the blob. You have to take on the blob. And that will be very, very difficult. I have the scars on my back from trying to take them on. And I didn't have sufficient momentum. I didn't have sufficient support infrastructure to be able to do that. So one of the things that has to happen, like you have in America, you know, when Trump went in, and Trump 2 was much better than Trump 1, because Trump went in with Elon Musk, he went in with Scott Bessent, he went in with Project 2025, he had a whole slew of executive orders ready to go. He knew what he was going to do on days 1 to 100 in the White House. He had it all drafted in advance, and he was ready to get rid of particular government departments like USAID. He was ready to deal with the Department of Education.
So what does Farage do?
Well,
Day one.
What I'm saying is that if the Prime Minister who gets elected, it might be Nigel Farage, in 2029, does not have at least that level of plan, they will not succeed. Because, you know, I'm a great critic of Keir Starmer, but he is not the only problem in Britain. We now have a judiciary that's completely unaccountable, thanks to the way Blair created the Supreme Court and the Judicial Appointments Commission. We've had police that have essentially become captured by woke ideology.
Are all those people the deep state, as you consider them? The police, the judiciary, the civil servants?
You can call them the blob, you can call them the deep state, but what I mean by the term deep state is I mean people who are in positions of power and aren't accountable to anybody.
Yeah.
They can't be voted out, They can't be sacked. Look at the Governor of the Bank of England. He's failed at every single task he's meant to have achieved. He's meant to have kept inflation below 2% since he started in office. He's completely failed.
But Rachel Reeves is still in her position. What's the difference between what happened with you and Rachel Reeves?
Well,
because gilt yields were higher under Reeves at certain points this year. Why is the media giving her a pass?
The big difference is that she's on the side of the establishment. She's gone along with everything she's been told to do by the Bank of England, by the Treasury. Those people are protected. They're protected by the wider media establishment, the likes of the BBC. They don't want to upset the apple cart because fundamentally, all of these people don't want the status quo to change. And what we have in Britain is we've got managed decline.
So is it intentional decline? Is it intentional decline? If they don't want it to change and they can see, they're not stupid, they can see nothing's working, everything's getting worse year after year, and they're not changing it, is it intentional? And if so, why?
It's intentional that they're preserving the status quo because they're benefiting from it. If you're in the public sector, you've got a protected pension, your salary's going up, you've got a cushy job. If you work in the mainstream media, if you work for the BBC, again, you benefit from a large public sector. If you've got lots of migration, you can get a cost-effective cleaner to clean your house. You're all right, Jack. But the problem is the rest of Britain is being completely screwed over, and they're seeing their incomes stagnate. They're seeing illegal migrant hotels and crimes being committed against young girls. They're seeing the consequences. But you're not, the British elite are not seeing the consequences because they live in nice places in London and the home counties. They've got a cushy number. Yeah,
well, as an isolated example of that was during COVID. Who was cheering on lockdowns? It was the people with nice gardens and big homes who weren't going to feel the effects of lockdowns and didn't give a fig about those living in, I don't know, high-rises in Birmingham who have no gardens.
And what happened during COVID? Huge amounts of money printing.
Yeah.
What happened there? Asset prices go up. Who benefits? People who own homes.
Yeah.
Who loses out? Young people who can't get on the housing ladder.
Stocks.
Or people who want to start a family and can't afford it. These policies have created huge problems, but the people who behind the policies, like the Bank of England, are not held to account. And this is what the Liz Truss show will do. It will expose how it has happened and who's behind it and what we can do about it.
Okay. Are you backing reform?
I'm not backing any political party because
come on, lay your cards on the table. Farage to save the West?
What I'm saying is the issue is much bigger than a political party. The issue is about how do we change the British system, which has failed our country for 30 years.
Is reform still the best chance of doing that? No, I don't need to say yes, I back them, but are they the best chance of...
I have not seen, and I am a member of the Conservative Party, but
why are you still a member of the Conservative Party?
Because I'm a loyal person. I've been a member of the Conservative Party for 25 years, but the point is that I have not seen from anyone the level of understanding of how bad the problem is. We've got the Americans having to issue memos about protecting our basic liberties, like free speech.
Oh, it's insane.
It is shocking. It is absolutely shocking, and yet the House of Commons debates a load of completely irrelevant subjects and doesn't actually talk about that.
Okay.
So I want to see more. But if Kemi Badenoch suddenly says, well, actually, as Conservatives, we made a huge mistake over the past 14 years. We didn't repeal the Human Rights Act. We didn't repeal the Bank of England Act. I will actually appoint the senior ranks of the civil service. And here are the people, I would listen to that.
Well, my only issue with the Tories, and I'm sure some viewers would agree, Tory voting viewers won't agree, is that we had, Priti Patel was in here yesterday as, of course, shadow foreign...
You're a very popular man.
Well, she was speaking to Bev, actually, so yeah, she shunned me. But she, of course, was Home Secretary under the so-called Boris wave. She welcomed something like 3.8 million migrants into Britain, gross migrants. And yet she's now shadow foreign secretary. So I guess the challenge for the Tories is, hang on a minute, Kemi, you're trying to present a new reformed Conservative Party, yet you've still got the old guard in your shadow cabinet. Do you see where I'm coming from?
But people can say that was a mistake or we got that wrong. That's what you have to do. You have to say, Like,
but she hasn't. But she hasn't done that.
There are mistakes I made. So, for example, I regret not backing Brexit when it happened, because I now understand the depth of the problems of the European Union that I did not really
But you admit that. Prissy said yesterday, I don't need to convince GB News viewers that we can be trusted because we've been in government and Reform haven't. We know how to work government. That's what she said.
Well, I think the Conservative Party needs to acknowledge the failure of the past 14 years.
Okay, one last question. Thank you for your time. You've been very, very generous. Have you got a message for GB News viewers? How can they help on the ground? Because it's all very well former Prime Ministers launching podcasts and shows and us talking about it here in the comfort of our studio in DC. What can everyday people who are waking up,
first of all,
going to work...
they can tune into the Liz Truss show,
and GB
which
News.
is available on YouTube, it's available on X, it's available on all of the platforms.
Is it weekly?
It is weekly, but there'll also be 2 audio shows a week as well.
Yeah.
If people haven't had enough, they can get even more. But what I would also say is we need people in Britain to step up.
How?
Protest against what's happening. Vote in elections. Volunteer their services to be part of government. I think that's really important. I've talked about people like Elon Musk who put their services forward to say, I'm actually prepared to run Doge. I'm prepared to clear out the rot that is going on in the state. Now, I'd love to see some British business people stand up and say that. And say what they're prepared to do.
Okay.
Are they prepared to run the deportation department? Are they prepared to run a project to cut government waste?
I would. I'll do I.
But they need to stand up
active
and be counted, because it almost feels like our friends, like the Americans, are sort of pointing out how bad things are, and people in Britain are acting like there's nothing happening. Yeah.
No, well said. PSF on gbnews.com/your say has said, I wish the Tory party stood by you, Liz, when you needed it.
So do I.
It would have been a great premiership, they say. Stay strong. Well, there you go. Liz, thank you very much. The Liz Truss Show, weekly and bits in between on all the big platforms.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Right, gbnews.com/your say. Let us know what you think about that. On the issue of illegal migration, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has previously said these small boat crossings are utterly unacceptable, and the vile people smugglers behind them are wreaking havoc on our borders. We have detained and removed more than 35,000 who are here illegally. Our historic deal with the French means those who arrive on small boats are now being sent back. Oh, we're doing this again, are we? On the issue of the economy, the budget and Rachel Reeves, the Prime Minister, has previously pointed to an increase in growth which defeated and beat OBR forecasts, an increase to the national minimum wage, 5 interest rate cuts and record investment. On their reporting, a BBC spokesperson has previously said the BBC reports without fear or favour and holds power and those who seek power to account. Anyone watching, reading or listening to our coverage can be in no doubt that we report, scrutinise and provide analysis on the current government and other political parties across a range of significant topics. And there's one more, you lucky so-and-sos. On the issue of free speech in Britain, the Prime Minister has previously stated that free speech is one of the founding values of the United Kingdom and that the government will protect it jealously and fiercely. That's what it says, jealously. Well, at least, Liz, on your show, you won't have to read rights of replies and do that kind of thing. But I guess it's fair play.
There'll be no Ofcom involved, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love Ofcom. Happy Christmas, Ofcom.